This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.
Let's move over to Sandra Birchmore. Dateline just did a special on this the other night. If you've not watched it and you want to kind of get caught up on this case, it's a good kind of entry-level place to go in and kind of get a general understanding of what's going on here. She was just 23 years old. She was pregnant and excited about her future when she was found dead in her Canton, Massachusetts apartment in February of 2021. At first, her death was ruled a suicide, but the truth was far darker. For over a decade, Sandra had been groomed and sexually exploited by Stoughton police officer Matthew Farwell, allegedly, starting when she was only 14 years old, and entangled with other members of the department as well. Those other entanglements allegedly happened after she was 18, because, that makes it so much better. Just weeks before she died, Sandra told Farwell she was carrying his child. Prosecutors now say Farwell strangled her and staged the scene to look like a suicide, silencing her forever to protect himself. 3 years later, the FBI charged Farwell with murder, accusing him not just of abuse, but of covering his tracks with the knowledge of someone trained in law enforcement. Other officers connected to Sandra, Farwell's twin brother William, Deputy Chief Robert Devine, and Animal Control Officer Joshua Heel have been forced out of policing or face decertification, though only Matthew Farwell now stands accused of the murder. Sandra's story is not just about her tragic death, but it's about the systematic abuse that was going on and what went on to protect it and allowed it to fester for so long. Bob, I know you've been following this along with many other stories in that part of the country, as it seems that there's a lot of intermingling of cast members here. Let's go all the way back to Farwell for folks who don't know much about this case, and all the way back to the Police Explorer program. What's the earliest we know about their interactions?
I mean, it started when she was very young and she got into the Police Explorer program, which is, kind of a community outreach program that I think in the minds of law enforcement is kind of selling the concept of maybe becoming a cop when you're older, and it's an outreach to the community as well. And they encourage kids to come in. And in that program, you're interacting with police. They're showing you some kind of basic procedural stuff. And, you're building a rapport with your local law enforcement agency. So that was how Sandra was introduced into this whole situation. And, from there, it just got really, really scary and ugly.
Yeah. And I mean, this abuse went on for years. Eventually, the parents are the ones who said, wait a second, we don't think her death was a suicide. And they called it out in the form of a civil lawsuit, which then eventually got the feds involved because, hey, local law enforcement wasn't investigating it because they were involved in it. Yeah. Let's go to the nexus of that, of how this went on for so many years. And in this case specifically, were there any signs? Did anybody realize that the abuse was taking place prior to her turning 18?
I would have to think so. I think it's impossible for somebody to groom somebody of that age if you have parents that are paying attention at all. All I can do as a parent of 4 children is look at things through my own lens and think about whether or not something like that happening over years would fall off my radar, or I wouldn't be like, why is this guy communicating with you? Why are you meeting this grown man at various times that don't seem to make it? I'd be all over it, but in terms of other people that were within the program with her, and I'm talking about kids her age, all the way to the other officers that were working in that program. I think it's highly unlikely, don't you? That no one had any idea that this kind of grooming was going on. I mean, when you see an inappropriate relationship, I I mean, I think all of us, when we're like, you'll kind of like first, if you see, if it's somebody you don't know, but you kind of see something and you're like, oh, that seems weird. It's like, it's either that guy is like that kid's daughter, and if they look to be kind of interacting in a way that goes beyond normal parent-child interaction in terms of affection, and it happens to be somewhere you see it, you notice it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all do.
Well, you hope you notice it. And I think a lot of us do notice it, but I feel like a lot of people don't notice it. And that's what I wonder about, a case like this. And I'm not trying to cast any sort of negativity on the family or anything like that, because they're victims here, obviously, too, of all of this. But when you see this member of the community, so a police officer, police explorer program, you think, okay, well, this is a good thing. And in a lot of cases, it is. This sort of things don't happen everywhere. But when it does happen, and you see the officer Farwell, who went above and beyond, is what it's going to be looked at as, oh, he's above and beyond. He's really trying to help this girl out, showing up to the library, help her study, do this or that, outside of the Police Explorer program. Nobody's seeing this as weird. I mean, the guy's in his, mid-20s at this point. She's 14 or something. That's not normal. There's not mid-20-some-year-old, upper 20-some-year-old men going to the library to help 14-year-olds study.
Well,
for any other reason other than they want something inappropriate, unless it's like your brother. I don't really see any reason why anyone, and I don't see how one wouldn't look at that, even if you have the purest of intentions, that you wouldn't go, people might look at this as being something weird. I shouldn't do that. That's inappropriate.
Red flags are what's getting me. And I'm coming from a place of, if you've ever been in a relationship and you see another woman texting your husband over and over and over and over and over again, you should be seeing something and kind of going, some of this isn't making sense to me. Now, if you're seeing somebody texting your daughter, that shouldn't be making sense to you. I don't care if they're in a program like this. They shouldn't be getting multiple texts. That's not a proper form of communication. Again, you've got to follow your gut instinct. If you see something that feels like a red flag, investigate it.
Is it because there's so many people, we base our own experience, we base how we're going to handle our experiences, our new experiences in life, on our own experiences in life? Is it because at a different place in time, in the 70s and the 80s, 90s, we've been, as individuals, sometimes close to the fire, if you will, sometimes burned by the fire as well, but sometimes close to it, that we go, well, they're just doing this. It's just that. It's just somebody that wants to help study. And we don't see it because we've lived it, and it worked out okay for us. So what could possibly be weird over here, until you find out more about what that person is truly up to? Maybe we didn't experience the full breadth of what their intentions were with the individuals that maybe we have interacted with in life. So we don't want to believe that there's this type of human being out there that would be doing these sort of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly true. It's exactly what I was saying about, the fact that I'm a father, and that's my lens, but we also have our life experience lens, right? Everything that we view through the lens of what our experience has been throughout life. So yeah, I think that, and we're, especially folks our age, we're coming out of a much different time. When we were kids, child abuse wasn't really talked about like it is now. No. I mean, it just wasn't. And it was, and I'm talking not only physical, but like SA as well. None of it was really discussed. So yeah, I think that's kind of, but that's a little bit of the same argument is, spare the rod, spoil the child type thing. We're like, back in my days, my dad would put me over the knee, and it's like, we don't do that anymore. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, we've evolved in terms of being human beings and understanding that our children are nothing more than small adults. They're little people, and they have feelings and they have opinions, and all of that matters, So I think we've evolved in the sense that we understand, we have a different understanding of children and how our duty to protect them is heightened because of exactly what we're looking at here with Birchmore, which is this grooming. And, grooming is a word that a lot of people throw around that I get the sense that people really don't understand breadth of it, just how deep it runs and what it is. It's like, it's one of those words that kind of appeared 7 to 8 years ago, and has really kind of been used ad nauseum now, to where I don't think that people are getting the full sense of what it is, just how incredibly evil it is, because the things that you see with any kind of grooming relationship is that it's always an authority figure, somebody that's in a position to where they can exert authority over another person, whether it's a child, whether it's somebody that's disabled in some way, whether it's a teacher to a student, even in college, whether it's somebody. I mean, frankly, if you're an employer employing somebody, you can groom them as well as your employees. We're talking about adults. I mean, it's always that position of power where you have the ability to be able to kind of control something that other person does, but that's not what it is. It's not a threat thing. It's this thing where the groomer builds trust and this relationship with the victim. And usually it's easier for these people, but when it's a child, because children want to trust adults. They're taught to trust adults. They're taught to trust their parents, and their parents are the ones that are raising them. And so I think innately almost they have this trust that they feel for adults. And when you have wicked people out there exploiting that for their own gain, and when I'm saying gains, I'm talking about in the worst way possible. That's how these situations with this grooming occurs. I mean, we talked about it last week with that Aaron Spencer case, man. It was the same thing. I mean, that guy was 67 years old. I mean, that's like an old man, that's grooming a 13-year-old kid. And if you sit, you're sitting on your couch listening to this, you're like, well, I don't even understand how that happens. Well, exactly.
But it happens everywhere, and it happens all the time. And it's not just, it can be anything. It's not just, male on female or female on male. It can be anything at all for whatever that sick person's goals are. And groomers, they're out there, they're grooming away at everything they can do. And I'll share a story here in a minute of an experience I had where it never went to any place far by any means. But when I look back on it, I go, that person was attempting that. That person was attempting that with me. I was a kid. I didn't realize it till later, till I looked at a headline off of the Associated Press one day and went, I think we know him.
Wow.
And Todd will remember this, maybe.
I knew exactly where you were going with it.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So back in the day, 96-ish, I'm 14, 15, working at the radio station. We had a nighttime show on. Everybody knows Delilah. It wasn't Delilah that did anything. We had a local guy. We call him the Love Doctor.
Oh, God.
Wow.
And it was like a local version of a love song show. And a lot of radio stations like in the 90s had these sort of things. It wasn't crazy. It was like a very normal type programming for adult contemporary radio in the evenings. You play Michael Bolton, all that shit. Anyway, he pre-records his show. I'm this eager 14, 15-year-old who can't wait to do anything around the radio station. And he comes in to record like once or twice a week for the whole week. And I'm wrapping up my day. I can't drive anywhere yet. Like, hey, when I'm done recording, want to grab McDonald's and I'll drop you off back at home? Sure. I think nothing of it. I'm like, it's another radio guy. He seems nice. And he did. I mean, I did not feel anything weird or creepy about this guy until years later, until I found out what the hell he did to other people. So there were several times we'd go to McDonald's, he'd drop me off. One of the last times he dropped me off, he asked if I could get him remember the America Online CDs or discs?
yeah.
Where it's like,
AOLs?
yeah, like 60 free hours or whatever. Do you got any of those? You got any of those? You know, I'm like, yeah, I think I might. Like, I usually throw them out because we would get them in mass quantity.
Yeah.
He's like, and then he starts to tell me, yeah, you know, I'd like to go and look at, you know, naked ladies on the internet with these. And this is, you know, early internet days, like 97, 98-ish.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so it's kind of weird that this guy is talking to me about like what he likes to look at, you know? Like, okay. And I didn't go and go to McDonald's with him anymore after that because I got a weird vibe. I felt there was something weird about it. Well, about I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months later, he's not working at the station anymore. We start running Delilah, so there's no need for him. We're sitting at the way the news came in was on the Associated Press computer. We had one computer in the newsroom, and that's where you got news from. And one of the headlines came up, this man's name, arrested. He was also a big brother, you know, as in the program, Big Brothers Big Sisters. And he was arrested because he was sharing that sort of material with children that were sleeping over at his house.
Wow.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know any more about what happened after that, but I can tell you I was thoroughly creeped out. I mean, I didn't know. Did you get any weird vibes off of that guy, Todd? I never really, I don't know. Maybe I was too young.
He seemed really normal, right? Great radio guy, seemed really personable, no issues with him. So when that came out, I was like blown away.
Yeah. I mean, and it's scary just how that sort of like nobody saw anything of it. There was another gentleman that some of us worked with or knew of in radio that ended up driving to like South Carolina or something to try and meet up. Yeah. Yep. He was another one. I had an office next to him in Oshkosh at Cumulus. And he was a big radio guy known in the market forever. Really just, I never got any weird vibes. And I don't know. I usually think I do get, but maybe I don't. But he was always just kind of like dad-like, nothing creepy, nothing weird. All of a sudden, the guy goes and drives across the country because he's been grooming and having a conversation with a supposed like 13, 14-year-old. It was an FBI agent. And there goes the rest of his life. But it's so creepy. I mean, these people are out there and we don't want to admit it. And you don't want to be cautious of every single human being that's just trying to be a decent person around you and your children. Not everybody who's being nice is a predator. But if you don't know the person and you've had a run-in or two with folks like this in your life, it's hard not to be like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reality is you have to be.
Yeah.
It's because they exist and they're not so far and few between that it's like we can't just kind of say, oh, well, you know, that's an exception to the rule. I don't want to necessarily say it's the rule, but it's kind of the rule, you know, and I've been coaching. I coach my daughter's softball team. And, you know, like even me as a parent, you know, I'm hyper conscious about not doing anything that the parents would construe as being over. Like I've been coaching kids in sports for a long time, and I'm an affectionate guy, and I like to hug kids around their shoulder, you know, but it's like you can't really, and it's a shame because those of us that are good people, it's important to show kids support and affection like that. Right. You know, that kind of killed it for all of us that aren't creeps.
You have to be hyper aware of the optics.
You really do, like in every sense, especially if it's male coach to female player.
Correct.
You know?
And I would say this, what I find interesting about that observation, like responsible, non-creepy adults are going to be hyper aware of the optics. Yeah. It's the ones that have zero awareness of the optics and seem to be pushing that line. And you're like, I'm sorry, that seemed like a really weird hug with that 16-year-old over there.
Yeah. Right.
That seemed a little too long.
Right.
They're the ones who have I mean, it's like that is a red flag. If you're not aware of the optics and you're just going to go, well, fuck it, this is how it was it's not back in your day. Right. We're in a very different place in time. So you better be aware of these optics or you're going to be looked at that. I mean, it kind of comes with the territory of life of, well, it's not 1988 anymore.
Exactly. In the leagues, you know, if you're talking about Little League, you know, they're hyper conscious about it. You know, they understand. And you go through, you know, some kind of training in terms of just from all of it, from like being like overly aggressive in terms of your coaching style and yelling at the kids, or, you know, and obviously when you have, you know, male coaches coaching, you know, and frankly, when my daughter said, I want to try softball out when she was young, like 8, like I always wanted, not for the reasons that I was worried that if she was around a male coach that I'd have to be like a hawk watching it, but more because I just wanted my daughter to be coached by a female who had played softball because of relatability. You know, that they're going to listen to that person more just because she looks like her. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for me, that was always something that I was, you know, striving to do rather, in terms of who she was going to be coached with. But I also like to be a part of her life, and I enjoy doing that. So, you know, but I also hate parent coaches typically. You know what I mean? So they're like, but yeah, I think that it's just such a different time that we live in, that you have to be cognizant of what's going on around you. And like Stacy said, you know, using kind of the example of, you know, a wife who's got a husband that's kind of curled up at the other end of the couch all the time and seems to be texting somebody, and you're like, well, who the fuck are you texting, dude? Oh, no one, man. I'm just texting Jim, you know, and then the wife has to creep in the phone because she's, you know, it's got major red flags, and women can typically sense when their dude's doing some shit like that. And, you know, and with parents, it's easier. I know that kids should have privacy to a certain extent, but at the same time, they're still children. You know, I'm my 13-year-old, we track exactly who she can and can't text. You know, I mean, it's got to go through. So we, you know, she was begging. I want to be on Snapchat. All my friends are on Snapchat, you know, so then we have to research, how do we control, keeping creeps out, you know, so because they're out there. I mean, the predators in terms of online is where it's really, really scary.
It is.
That's harder to monitor than the things that are going on in real life. Now, I mean, with like Sandra's case, everybody let her down. Like every single person that was an adult that was involved in her life. And again, like I'm with you, Tony, I'm not blaming the parents, but every single person that was an adult in that child's life let her down. And you know, and it turned out the worst way possible. So
I mean, it literally took civil litigation to uncover the foundational pattern of a crime. That the initial, there really wasn't a criminal investigation in any of this. It was all completely overlooked. How often is that where it takes the civil litigation to finally unearth the reality of what took place here?
I mean, I wouldn't pretend to know the exact answer as to how frequently that is, but when you get a case where you've gone to where there's been an outcry of some sort, and typically what they'll do is they'll bring you, if your child makes an outcry, and they'll say, okay, we're going to bring you in for a what they call a CAC interview, which is the child advocacy, and they have different names from all over. But in Illinois, they call it the Child Advocacy Center, and essentially you're meeting there with somebody who's trained to try to elicit information in terms of what the outcry is. They're typically not straight up law enforcement, but they're law enforcement adjacent, and they are not usually in a room with a cop, because they're trying to get information from that child. But the first thing you have to do is you have to build rapport, and you want that child to feel comfortable to the extent where they're going to be open and honest about, what they're saying happened. So if you have that type of situation where you go in and you do the CAC interview and they don't feel that they have enough and they don't bring a case, that's where you'll see these civil cases kind of pop up, and you'll go after them. And that's cases where you have families that don't think that they're getting justice and that law enforcement isn't doing it from their perspective, what they should be doing. And so then you bring the civil suit in order to try to shine more light on it. Because there's two parts of it, right? There's the money part. If it doesn't involve some famous singer or some shit like we've been seeing recently, and you're bringing suit for two purposes. One, to out that singer or that artist or actor or whatever it may be, or somebody of note. And, you want the cash and you want to flamethrow them both. So it serves both purposes civilly. And what you hope, and because we saw, that's exactly what we saw with Diddy, right? I mean, it was like, it had to be the civil suits that finally got the feds say, all right, we're going to take a look at this. And that's typically where it is. If you have a situation where state law enforcement agencies are just refusing to do anything about it, filing those suits, especially if you file them in federal court, are a pretty good way, and even in state court, but it's going to put it on the radar of the feds in terms of, okay, what's going on here? So, I mean, it's an avenue. It's an avenue for victims to try to get their cases on law enforcement's radar, because I think that people just misconstrue exactly, how you go about getting law enforcement to try to really do something about what you're claiming is happening. So,
and how are you going to get law enforcement to look into this when it's their own officer that they need to be looking at, which is what exactly happened here. Local police department investigated one of its own, almost immediately ruled the death as suicide, case closed. So the civil suit opens up, and then that gets the feds looking at it. Ultimately, we go back to a medical examiner ruling this as suicide. Now, the medical examiner, it's not the officer. It's not Michael Farwell's not the one who ruled it as suicide. A medical, so another person has to be involved in this process. How the hell did that break down so much, where the medical examiner is saying, yes, this is a suicide, despite when they look back later, oh, wait a second, her bone's broken in her neck. There's signs of strangulation. There's all this other evidence around that point to it not being, but somehow somebody checked that box right when it took place. How do we get to that place? And then why is there no accountability for any of this? Because it clearly looks like, well, somebody along the line either made a really horrible judgment call on the death, or there was a reason they made that very horrible judgment call. And it wasn't because of their judgment. Yeah, no, I think that in the situation with the medical examiner, when you have an ME in there doing an autopsy and there's a potential that it could be ruled a homicide, more often than not, you're going to have law enforcement in that room during the medical examiner's autopsy. And typically they're giving the ME information about what the scene looked like, what they discovered at the scene in terms of, like, I mean, if they're going in there and they're saying, okay, well, there was a length of rope strung from, like whatever they would have claimed that she had hung herself from, some kind of thing, or a belt, or, whatever they're claiming in terms of how she committed suicide, which obviously had to have been hanging herself, right? Because I mean, the strangulation part of it from a doorknob, right?
Right. Whatever the case may be.
Like, you can't hang yourself. Like, it's like, what?
Yeah. The whole point is that your fight or flight reflex can't be, used in terms of, okay, I'm now sitting on the floor, I'm choking to death, I'm going to stand up because my body's going to make me do it. So that doesn't work, right? I mean, that's why people hang from a height, so that the feet can't touch. So yeah, that should have been a red flag for any ME. But I mean, the best I could guess, if it's from the just completely whiffed on the cause of death from the ME's perspective, is that they were fed information by whatever cop or cops were sitting in that autopsy with them during the autopsy, and they're like, all right, well, this, I want to rule it out, self-harm.
Yeah.
And if it's the other thing, then that's a whole different thing, right?
I think that there's an interesting piece to that too, because just as Farwell could have groomed and did groom Sandra Birchmore, could have groomed the medical examiner.
100%.
Could have groomed, not necessarily in the same way, but they were manipulated, I guess would be more of the correct word to use in that sort of a context. But if it's a small town, everybody knows each other. The cops know the medical examiner from many other cases here and there. You're rubbing elbows all the time. And if you're the medical examiner and you're not twisted and you're not the one that's thinking somebody is going to be, skewing this for their own weird, dark murder plot that took place here, you may be thinking, this person I've been working with for years seems to be a nice guy. Maybe had lunch with him, maybe this or that. We see him around. You're not thinking that they'd be doing this sort of thing. You're not walking in with that expectation. Just the same way, 14-year-old Sandra is not thinking, this guy's going to try and sleep with me. The same way any young person, same way I, at 14, 15, didn't think the guy that wanted to go take me to have McDonald's had any sort of other intention than being a radio person and wanting to take me to McDonald's. And so you learn later, oh, these people have other fucked up intentions. So that medical examiner, it doesn't always necessarily mean nefarious. It means they have a rapport with their coworkers, and this happens to be their job.
Right. Yeah, it's easier to see that way than.
But why didn't they look at the facts? I guess that's the thing. It's one thing to just go and say, well, they said this, but when you look at if you actually look at the evidence of her, you can see it. Why did they just gloss it? Well, they said it's this. Well, maybe it was this. Is it? You're a medical examiner. There's certain things that can be explained, and there's certain things that can't be explained.
Yeah.
Feels like a cover-up is what it feels like. At the end of the day, it feels like they were protecting their own.
It's a cover-up, but who's all involved in that cover-up, I guess, is a question. We know Farwell allegedly was, but was the medical examiner, or was it exactly that? Just really sloppy work and going along, well, my colleague over here says this, well, I'm going to go with that. I trust them, and blah, 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 done. Evidence be damned.
But that's what I'm saying. Like that thing where I'm talking about during an autopsy and there's a cop in there. And if it's your cops. Yeah, you are going to have that rapport. Yeah, you are going to have that relationship with them. And, you're not necessarily, as the medical examiner, going to be challenging the facts that they're telling you. Farwell went in there and he staged the thing to look like it was that she had hung herself. A medical examiner isn't going to say, well, that sounds like bullshit based on what I'm seeing here on the table and what you're telling me you found there at the scene. Like, that's not their role.
Well, and does the MA even have knowledge to look at a scene like that and go, this seems fishy?
Not that I'm aware of. Typically, MEs will show up at scenes for sure. Mm-hmm. There's no question about it. And I think probably more often than not, if it's a scene wherein they're eventually going to be taking the bodies from the scene, the ME will show up. So in this case, I don't know if the ME ever showed up. If they went there, did their investigation, and then I would have assumed that when they decided to bring the body, like typically that's when the ME would come.
Yeah, is when
they get the scene processed, the medical examiner then shows up, or the county coroner, whoever it is that's dealing with it. And then they'll but I don't know if they're going in and examining the scenes.
Yeah. That's more of an investigative detective type work. And if those people that are doing that are the ones who perpetrated the crime, that's where you're.
Well, that's how you see how this can happen. So I don't know. And I think it probably varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction in terms of what MEs are doing. In terms of I don't think that they're going in and necessarily, but they might be because it's helpful. They should be, they're a different breed than the cops. We should be able to rely on medical examiners because they're supposed to be completely unbiased and objective in terms of determining what the cause of death is. and the mode of death.
Look at Ellen Greenberg. I mean, there's a prime example of, wait a minute, this is supposed to be somebody who is, number one, a doctor, correct?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, your checks and balances go out the window when it's a good old boy system, which seems kind of like what this was. Well, they say it's this. Yeah, you're right. I believe. Like when the one's not, because at the end of the day, the medical examiner didn't do their job. They did not get to the results that another autopsy got to.
Right.
And that's simply you didn't do your job.
Right.
I mean, are there any sort of consequence? I mean, I know there's probably not, and there usually isn't for many of these cases, but professional consequences a police department can face or the medical examiner can face when you got a federal investigation that proves that it actively ignored or covered up the evidence in the case other than Farwell, who we know has been charged, but the other ones, well, you're giving up your ability to be a police officer for the rest of your life because it turns out you were pretty shady in this whole passing the girl around thing. Granted, she was of age, and it does appear that it was consensual when she was of age, but the ickiness, the ick factor is all there because these people are all intertwined. They're all friends, and this has been going, and Farwell, at least, we know, have been doing this since she was 14.
Yeah.
And then to stage the thing, I mean, it makes everybody wonder, well, did they know what was going on here? Are they aware that this was a cover up of a murder? Do they really think that she killed herself? How deep do you think that this case went in terms of others being aware or at least suspicious in that department that Farwell murdered her?
I think when you kind of look at it and when you were talking about it, seems to be kind of in the same kind of little area in Massachusetts where all this shit goes down. But you've got some of the same cops when you're talking about the communications between Birchmore and Farwell and we're talking like 60, 70,000 text messages were somehow overlooked by one of the other cops in the department. I mean, when that kind of stuff's going on, I mean, common sense is going to dictate like the jig is up. When the feds saw it, they're like, I mean, because all the Karen Reed shit stemmed out of this case. People that don't understand how that federal investigation into that department started, it was because of this case. Mm-hmm. And, from that, they're like, all right, well, this case is so fucked up. Like the way they're like, this is so twisted that we have to take a harder look at some of the other stuff that's going on, which frankly, you want the feds doing. Mm-hmm. I don't have some kind of blind trust in cops. I mean, they're fucking guys that went and got badges and went to a police academy and have a shit ton of power. I want oversight for them because I don't trust them, and that's not to say there's not amazing cops out there. Sure. But, anytime somebody has that much power, you need somebody keeping an eye on them. And typically it's us defense attorneys in terms of when there's an arrest, making sure they're not out there violating people's rights and, calling them on that. But on the front end of it, when they're out there doing their shit, I mean, other than internal affairs, I mean, who else is there? Which to me is still in-house. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I know how you see it on TV shows that like all the cops hate IAB guys. Oh, you're fucking
it's still in-house.
Fuck you. It's like, I don't believe that. It's still in-house. So it's hard to say. And the other part of it is that you've got these police unions that are fierce. It is really hard to fire a cop.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It just is. So, I mean, they have to really, really fuck up in order for them to be discharged. So, as far as the medical examiner, a lot of times they're elected. Mm-hmm. I mean, the county coroners are always elected. At least they are in our state. MEs, I think, could be fired obviously if they've been hired. But in terms of kind of like trying to figure out where it fell apart in this case, I mean, there's all kinds of people to point your fingers at.
When checks and balances disappear, you do end up going down the conspiracy road because people are conspiring to cover something up.
Yeah. And I think it's like here it would have been after the fact. I think, initially Farwell was probably just, doing this shit on his own accord. Maybe like you'd have to think, dude, some of his other cop buddies that were in the program with him were like, dude, you're kind of fucking being creepy. with this chick, but
unless they're all being creepy too.
Exactly.
But again, there's so much pressure within the ranks that even the good apple who's sitting there going, I don't like what I'm seeing, they may be so fearful of the process of the shit that's going to go down if they, raise their hand and say, I'm not okay with this, because so many might be corrupt in the department that they're outnumbered.
Yeah, 100%. Like not only is that maybe, that's absolutely the truth.
Yeah. And sometimes I imagine some of those folks feel like there's this corruption everywhere. I'm one of the good ones, and they need some balance in here. They need some good people in here who can do what they can do within their power while still trying to keep their job and be able to be accountable for what's going on behind the scenes. Some people just trying to endure it like that. It's always interesting in cases like this where then you have weird behavior that goes on, like, phones and things like that being destroyed or deleted or gone. And that ties into the Karen Reed case a bit. And I don't want to go super into Karen Reed, but when we see in that case, there were several of the officers, they all got rid of their phones at a certain point. Now, and many of those officers were not directly involved on this case, on the Sandra Birchmore at all. Right. But they did know people. They communicate. They text. They're there. So you're texting your buddies, your colleagues, whatever, about stuff. Someone who may be involved in that could be texting stuff back and forth to people who are not on that case, but still wearing a badge. That's what I always suspected about that piece of that puzzle when we're talking about the Karen Reed connection, was that they're like, what are they getting rid of on their phones? And does it have anything to do with this case that we're talking about over here, which at the time was Karen Reed? It made me wonder, like, is this like there's a lot of shadiness here? So I'm going to guess there's a lot of things on these phones that probably connect to far more cases than just the one at hand, and that they may have a vested interest in getting rid of because it will be unearthed because they were going to look at it for this case. Well, you may not find the evidence for it on this case, but you may end up opening an investigation to something else because of what you find on it because of that.
Well, and keep in mind, how stupid are you? I mean, you're in law enforcement and you think just destroying your phone is going to take care of everything? Can we have an intellectual test here? Because if that's what you think, you're not very good at your job. You're not paying attention.
I mean, you're 100% right. But the reality is, if you destroy the evidence, you've destroyed the evidence. Yeah. If think about it from the perspective, if you're a cop and you know that your carrier after 30 days is not going to be able to produce the actual messages themselves, they'll obviously be able to show that a text went from this number to this number, or was received from this number to this number. But in terms of the context of the text themselves, they're not going to be able to get it. I mean, if you've got all kinds of shit on your phone that you're like, fuck, dude, like, because I'm a cop, I know they're going to be able to extract everything. Like, I got to flamethrow this phone, man, because I'd rather deal with the destruction of evidence charge than murder. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
So they weren't idiots in doing what they did in, taking like the phone to the military base and physically destroying the SIM card and the phone, because that's what you do. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it is that it's a lesser of evils of what they know they could be up against once they realize that the heat is getting a little bit too close.
Thank you for that, because I didn't see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's and it could be your way too, though. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, every cop doesn't have to be a criminal mastermind, but you would think baseline that they would all have a pretty clear understanding that you're going to be able to extract everything on that phone. But like, to Tony's point, talking about kind of like the broader scope, where everybody's like, oh, well, this is why all these people in the Karen Reed thing were acting so fucking weird and deleting shit. And where if it's cops, it could have been anything. I mean, we talked about it at one point in terms of, maybe affair, whatever. But when you think about it in terms of in relation to what was going on with Birchmore and potentially other cases, especially cops that are texting one another, And if they're like, oh man, that was fucked up what fucking Farwell did, you know, where they're making, you know, like allegations of knowledge that they knew. So, I mean, you're going to fucking get rid of that shit, dude.
Yeah. Because
you know, I mean,
that can incriminate them, not just on the level of, and that could be to a very innocent person who also is fearful and isn't saying anything. I'm not saying it's right or wrong that they didn't. I'm saying it's wrong they didn't say anything. I am saying that. If you 100%. Do have knowledge of this, you should have fucking spoke up. But if you didn't, but you were doing it for fearful, I have more understanding. It certainly doesn't make you as bad as the perpetrator of the crime itself. But you got some accountability there, and you'd be facing that accountability. If you didn't do the right thing out of your own fear, you still could face those consequences. So getting rid of that stuff, everybody's going to act in their own self-interest at the end of the day.
100%. I mean, people always do, you know, I mean, that's just the reality of this thing, is that people are always going to be in acting in their own self-interest, but more importantly in self-preservation mode.
Safety, security, and prosperity. That's what everyone's going to always be acting in their own interest for. That's how people work.
That's just how we operate. And it's you know, it's sad. You know, and that's why when you think about this Birchmore thing, kind of on a bigger level, you know, it's really hard for me to believe that within the program itself, that, you know, these other cops that were working that program didn't know what was going on, you know, and but like you said, it's like, you know, there's certainly allegations that Sandra was passed around, you know, between these, which to me is just so disgusting and horrifying, man. It's like, it's such a breach of the public trust. It's such a breach of their duty. It's such a breach of their authority. And it's like, again, when you think about the grooming side of it, it's, you know, I always tell people on my show, I'm like, I get the sense, because I'll be reading the chat, and I'm gonna get the sense that you don't really have an idea or clear understanding what grooming is, and just how deeply these predators can get their claws into these kids, in terms of, you know, because it's like everybody thinks, oh, a kid's gonna say, oh, creep, I don't take stranger, you know, candy from stranger. It's not how it works. No. They ingratiate themselves with these kids. They create this trust, and, you know, and it's a slow process. Yeah. You know, they're not going in there immediately trying to get sexual with these kids. They're building that trust in that relationship long before that happens. And then when it happens, you know, these kids have this misconception that this person loves them and cares for them. It's terrifying. It's terrifying.
And look, I mean, I'm thinking back into the 90s when I was like in junior high. I remember there being some teenage girls that, you know, came from kind of rough homes, were certainly seeking out some sort of figure that was going to be stable. And I remember we were like, what, 14, 15, 16 around that point in time. We couldn't drive. So it'd have been like, in that age range. Yeah. And I remember some of those girls being like, I got me a man.
Yes.
And he's 20, or he's in his early 20s in college, or he's early 20s or something. I got me a man. You got yourself, like, with them like shaming the other girls who were dating the other 14-year-old boys. It's like, I got me a man. And this is open conversation.
Yeah.
And guess what? None of those children who are in this circle of discussion are looking at that going, oh, you're being groomed.
Right.
Maybe today they would be. Maybe there's more awareness to that. We didn't have To Catch a Predator. Dateline wasn't about all this back then. Right. Maybe today there'd be a little bit more, you'd hope, but I don't know that there is. Because every single one of us who were not being groomed in that moment, we're just like, well, that's a weird relationship. I don't know, like, how this 20-some-year-old man is relating to you, but it was just accepted. Like, oh, she's dating somebody. She's dating an older man, and she's 14. Wow. And to think that was, you know, like our normal way of thinking. But look, when you're that age, I don't know that most 14-year-olds are thinking all that differently today within the confines of their own bubble when one of them goes and says this to them.
Well, they don't have the capacity to do that. No,
they don't. They don't have the reps, hopefully, to think that, you know, because hopefully they've had a life that hasn't been filled with trauma and predators. Yeah. I mean, the ones that do recognize it probably have had a life that's filled with trauma and predators. Or dad had them start watching To Catch a Predator at a very young age, and they're able to look at this shit and go, I'm one of those dads.
I know. I was just going to say, it's you.
Yeah.
Or an older sibling.
Or an older sibling, yes.
It's like my older daughter, like she went to the same school as my 12-year-old's going to, or they're now 13, same middle schools, knows the same teachers, so like she's kind of she's a bit of a watchdog in terms of my youngest.
Sure.
As Cameron knows, or she'll be like, oh, what about this? It's like, because I think that the kids are more aware, and I'm basing that on, just this concept that there's chatter that goes on about, like between these kids with anything. Not necessarily. I'm certainly not implying there's any creeps at my kid's school, because as far as I know, they're all wonderful people. But in terms of just kind of like, I see it that when I look at a group of girls, like a friend group, that I like to think that they protect one another to a certain extent. Like, I like to think that if my daughter was being groomed by some 20-year-old, that her friend group would be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, but the problem the problem with that, though, is the groomer is going to then convince that child, those aren't your friends. If they're telling you that our love isn't real. And there was fucking songs about this in the 80s, and like, look at Benny Mardone's End of the Night. She's just 16 years old. Leave her alone, they say. And the video's about this creeper coming into this girl's window, and father's chasing her out, and this is popular music. It's been like celebrated for so long and normalized in weird ways, and we normalize it in weird ways too that are very different than that it was back then. But there's certain ways that we just normalize this unhealthy behavior, and then I a lot of the girls, I hope, would stand up and say whoa, but nobody wants to admit they're wrong, including children. So when children are being met with, oh, this guy's creeping on you, and this is really not right and not appropriate, the first reaction from a young girl that's being preyed upon like that is probably typically not, oh, you're right, I didn't see it that way.
Right.
It's more like, fuck you.
Right.
I love him. He loves me. You're just jealous.
But there's strength in numbers.
There is.
Yes. And like, the other part of it is like, these days, especially like kind of like we're out a little more rural. We're not quite as urban. So, there are rather large friend groups that exist. And these kids are all like, all up in each other's shit in terms of what boys they're talking to, with Snapchat. It's like, the ability to be able to communicate with one another, I think, is helpful in kind of tempering that particular situation. Because back in the old days, say in the 80s and 90s, when we were talking about, we didn't really have that type of ability to be able to communicate in a group, to where even if one of your friends is like, hey, yo, that's fucked up. Like, I don't know why this guy's talking, in the group chat, going to make you more aware, where they're just, and they can locate each other. They just are way more involved. Like, I have this concept that I think that there is the real power and strength in numbers for girls that age. And, it's like, it's my rule. I tell all of my daughters, I'm like, I never want you going anywhere without a homie with you, at least one, preferably more, So like, but I hear what you're saying. Like, if the groomer's so deep in to that point where they've already formed a relationship, then you got problems. You know what I mean? Then like, I'm talking more front end when friends see something just fucking off going on. Like, I like to think that most kids, because we've drummed it into their heads enough through school and just through living life, that, look, there's fucking creeps out there, and you need to be hyper attentive to these creeps, and you need to be aware when they're doing things that seem innocuous or innocuous on the front end, but are really very devious in terms of what their motive is. You've got to put them on high alert for that, which sucks. It sucks. It's like, I lived a very different life as a child in terms of kind of like innocence and being able to go out until whenever the street lights came on, and my parents not having to micromanage where the fuck I was and what I was doing and who I was with. Those days are long gone.
Yeah.
You know, and it's there's just a lot of bad people out there. And
I want to hit one more point on this before we wrap up, because the DNA test obviously came back. It shows Farwell's not even the father.
Dude, what the fuck?
That just blew me out of the water.
Now, does that fact, and I know I'm going to throw it out there because I want your answer. Does that fact weaken the prosecution's case, or does it simply just remove one potential motive to reveal the deeper, more sinister one here?
I think it plays the opposite. I think it strengthens the case, because the fact of the matter is like, this was completely unnecessary. If the true motive was not to just hide the fact that he was in a relationship with a child and going to face whatever is going to come with that, but the fact that the real motive was to hide the fact that he had a child with her, you know, and that because, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
in
completely.
his mind, it's that part of the case where I'm like, are we pretending like fucking people didn't know that this guy was like molesting this girl?
I think a lot of people were looking the other way. Yeah.
Well,
that's the screwed up part. I think a lot of people were just like, well, she's of age now. Yeah, they started dating, because they'll say something like, use a safe word when they were, and then the people will look back in their own world and go, well, my grandparents got married at this age and that age. Well, that's kind of, and that will be rationalized. They will rationalize grooming and all of this shit. Yeah. Because people don't want to look back at their own world and go, that's kind of fucked up where I came from. Yeah. So with all that being said, with the not being his, are we ever going to find out whose kid this is? I mean, she's dead. So it's not like she can get court orders to force paternity tests on all these men that she had been sleeping with. Can a court order come into, can we run a paternity test on everybody in the department?
Yeah. Well, that's the fucking thing, right? I mean, that's a really interesting question, because I have long thoughts on DNA collection, and I'm always concerned about law enforcement misusing it, or, you know, abusing the power that they have with IgG and those things. And, you know, as much as I think there's this thought process that they'd love to have every single fucking person in this country's DNA on file, it stands to reason that we should have every fucking cop's DNA on file.
I agree with that.
You know, it's like,
it's part of the job. It's like, you want to do this, you're going to be held to a higher standard because you're a police officer. So because of that, yes, some of the rights and freedoms that the citizens out there enjoy, you don't get, but you also get to carry a gun and tell people what to do. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, you have huge power. Yeah. So, I mean, the only other way they could do it, T, is if they're going to do it surreptitiously.
Yeah.
You know, if they're going to sneak around.
Go find somebody eating pizza.
Yeah, they go, look at that fucking pizza plus that guy left. Oh,
hear him in this shit. Yeah.
That guy. Yeah, I mean, I would think that there would be some kind of push to try to figure out who actually impregnated her. Now, I mean, I have no idea what Sandra was up to outside of this relationship with Farwell. I mean, because he was fucking married.
Well, we do have ideas, because there was 3 other people who admitted to having sexual relations with her who were all officers. So we have some of an idea what she was up to.
God, dude, it's so fucked up.
I would think at least those 3 who can't be cops now for the rest of their lives have to take the test. And if not, maybe somebody should be looking around for their fucking pizza boxes.
Exactly.
And maybe we should figure this out, and then gather everybody together, make them think they're going to a big old, party at Buffalo Wild Wings, and then suddenly Maury pops out. And guess what? Who's the father?
Take all their half-eaten chicken wings.
Exactly. They're like, here we go, everybody. Maury Povich is showing up for one final appearance in Canton, Massachusetts. Mark your calendars.
You know what? In light of all the failure on the front end, it's the least we could do for Sandra Birchmore.
It is.
That type of investigation needs to take place on the back end because everybody failed her as a child. So I'd love to see that. And it would make for great content.
I would love to see Maury show up and do this at a Buffalo Wild Wings as well in Canton. I think that would be...
It's a winner, dude. It's a winner.
Yeah. And you have like other like special appearances by other people like that come in like, oh my God, Proctor's here today. Like, what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
And in no way am I saying Proctor is the father of Sandra Birchmore's child.
He's not saying that.
Not saying that. It's just a special appearance. It's, you know, it's just the greatest hits of all of the shit that went down over there. Yeah.
Good times.
That's going to wrap up.
Buffalo Wild Wings.
To wrap up this episode of Hidden Killers Live. Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube if that's where you're watching us. Be sure to press subscribe wherever it is, whatever podcast platform you are currently listening to us on. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of it. We come to you live every single Monday through Friday. 10 a.m. Central is when it starts on YouTube. And then, of course, you get the content right away as we put it out. So thank you for tuning in today. Let us know your thoughts. Hit subscribe. For Bob, for Stacy, for Todd, I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.